It's nice to hear this before you die. I want to thank Dr. Rosser and Kyle for recognizing Colette, because Colette is the reason that all of us are here today. Colette asked me to give you the short version of my purpose in life, and I'll do that, but I would like to give you some background first, and then conclude on what I've learned about how to treat black people with respect to humanity and how not to treat them. If you imagine your selfhood as being like a skyscraper building, both of them have an underground foundation and a base upon which that foundation rests, and then there's an above ground foundation, and then there's the visible structure that you can see, everyone can see. My focus is on the underground foundation and the foundational base. In other words, your philosophy of life. This came into focus for me when my sister Jocelyn gave me some yoga books that were written about 100 years ago that had preserved ancient African philosophy. And I had never heard of this. I've had 13 years of training after college, and I'd never heard anything. In fact, the only thing I knew about African history was in the 4th grade. There was one picture of little black Sambo running around the tree, and that was my black history. But in studying this, they were honoring Hermes Trismegistus, who is a black Egyptian of around 5500 BC. It was at this time that African tradition began to take form and take its final form. The African tradition had at its base God and love. They considered God and love the same. Now, love for Africans is nothing like what the Greeks deal with love when they talk about degrees of love and that love is an emotion. Africans said this has no place, absolutely no place, because they're in two entirely separate worlds. Out of love sprang what is called Ma'at, M-A-A-T. Ma'at means love in action. If you can imagine a white light that's passed through a prism, on the other side you will get rays. Now, if that white light is love, the rays that you get will also be love, but in various kinds of ways. For example, Africans attributed righteousness to the color orange, and justice to the color green, and so forth, until they have all of the virtues. Now, when you collected all of those virtues together, you have what is called Ma'at. Now, the basis of African tradition came from the law of sympathy. The Africans believed that there's one universal high God, and this was at least 5500 BC, who created different planes of existence. One of those planes was the spirit world, and another was the humans, and another was animals, and another was plants and non-biological life. They said that because God made all of these things, they were all related. And in addition to that, the substance of God went through all of these things. To help in understanding the substance, the heart, the blood that comes out of my heart goes down to my all of my digits. Even though my digits are different and they do different things, they are all supplied by the same blood, which is the same concept of God being all in all of God's creation. These were the factors that went into establishing African tradition. Now they figured that once they had come up with this, it would last and it would be true forever, and therefore there was no point in changing. For this reason, black people are a very traditional people. That's very important to understand if you are going to do any research. Meanwhile, at the end of the establishment of the African tradition, about 5,000 years later, the ancient Greeks who were just beginning to get started in their culture would come over to Africa to study. At least 2/3 of all Greek scholars studied in Africa. And they include all of the academic household names that you're familiar with. One of these people was Pythagoras. Now, Pythagoras studied in Africa for 23 years. And when he came back to Greece, he made a fundamental change. He said, whereas Africans had said that God is the measure of all things, Pythagoras taught that man is the measure of all things, which means that you go within yourself, your feelings and your thoughts, to come up with what you think to be right. Now this concept spread throughout the Western world. It was revitalized during the Renaissance. And it can be seen in a host of self-related words that came in at that time. The man-centeredness. And some of these words were individualism and individualist, and then the 7 H words. Humanitarian, humanism, humanist, humane, human, humanities, and humanity. All of these words, because they deal with human, and note that they deal with human in their beginning, are man-centered, are self-centered. Now this is the same thing that happened from what Pythagoras said, that man is the measure of all things. As a result of this, there have been 2 tracts related to humanity. The one track is called the psychical feelings that has been used in the Western world. 2 words that help demonstrate what psychical feelings are. One of them is sympathy and the other is empathy. In sympathy, you're feeling sorry that someone is having pain. With empathy, you're feeling with somebody. But note that at no time is there a connection between the people involved. By contrast, Africans believe in spiritual feelings. Now, to help in understanding that, they said that a human soul is the image of God, and that there's a system of feelings. One aspect of those system of feelings is spiritual feelings, and they are next to the soul. Then next to spiritual feelings are psychical feelings, and next to psychical feelings are physical feelings, which is in contact with the world. Now, Africans went solely with spiritual feelings. The one word that best characterizes spiritual feelings is compassion. This means that you feel another person's pain and it bothers you so much that you want to do something about it. Here you are intimately connected because you don't know where that person's pain ends and your pain begins. The psychical feelings of the Western world has been carried on down into